The Salesforce platform currently has at least 3 tools which contain an overlapping set of automation functionality: workflow rules, process builder, and flow builder. Salesforce recognizes that this is a problem area in terms of maintenance and innovation. The future of automation is flow in Salesforce. By the end of this year, 2022, users will no longer be able to create new workflow rules and processes using Process Builder. So why am I making this lecture on the functionality that is going to be shut down? Because if you are working as an admin for an organization, you will still be required to maintain the existing processes and workflow rules until they reach end of life. And as of now, there's no end of life that has been declared. You will also need to understand the functionality in order to migrate these processes and workflow rules into flow in the future. So let us go through the functionality of workflow rules and process builder in the next few slides. And don't worry, I will not just show you the PPT slides. I'll also give you a demo of process builder using a Salesforce playground. Workflow lets you automate the standard internal procedures and processes to save time across your organization. A workflow rule is the main container for a set of workflow instructions. These instructions can always be summed up in a single if-then statement. So workflow rules can be broken into two main components. They contain the criteria, which is the if part of the if-then statement, and actions, which is the then part of the if-then statement. So in short, if a criteria is met, then perform some actions. That is the definition of a workflow rule. And workflow rules can be used to assign a new task to a user, a role, or a record owner. Workflow rules can also be used to send email alerts. Workflow rules can perform field updates, but they can update the value of a field on the particular record, but not of unrelated records. And you can also use workflow rules to send secure configurable API messages in XML format to a designated listener. So some examples of workflow rules can be to assign follow-up tasks to a support rep, let's say 1 week after a case has been updated. Or you can use a workflow rule to send the sales manager an email alert when a sales rep qualifies a large deal. You can change the owner field on a contract 3 days before the contract expires. You can trigger outbound API messages to an external HR system to initiate the reimbursement process for an approved expense report in Salesforce. So if you look at the sample workflow, which is on this slide, each workflow rule consists of the criteria that causes the workflow rule to run. In this case, it would be if the opportunity stage is not closed won and the opportunity amount is more than $1 million, that would cause this workflow to get triggered. For such opportunities, it would execute these immediate workflow actions. It would send an email alert to the account team stating that a new high value opportunity has been created. It would notify the executive committee, which is again an email alert. It would perform a field update to change the probability to 20%. And as an outbound message, it would update external third-party marketing systems using API in XML format. There are also some time-dependent workflow actions that are defined, which will cause a task to be created for the opportunity owner to follow up with the customer 14 days before the opportunity's close date. And then again, 7 days before the opportunity close date, it would create a task for the sales manager to contact the account, and it would perform a field update, which will act as a flag for the executive to be involved. Now coming to Process Builder. Process Builder supports 3 types of processes for your automation needs. The type of the process determines what triggers the process. So it could be a record change, which starts when a record is created or updated. It could be an event process that starts when a platform event message is received. Or it could be an invocable process, which starts when something else like another process triggers this process. So each process consists of criteria, which is denoted as a decision box, and this determines when to execute an action group. The process also consists of action groups, which consist of immediate actions or scheduled actions. Scheduled actions are possible only for record change processes. The platform event or invoked processes would not support scheduled actions. So in this example, the process is defined to start when an opportunity record is created or edited. The three criteria or decision boxes check whether a high value deal was won or a high value deal was lost or a quote was given to the customer. For the first criteria node, the first criteria node that evaluates to true will get executed and the process will stop after executing those actions. In the high value deal one criteria, you could evaluate whether the opportunities amount is greater than $1 million and the opportunity stage is closed won. If both these conditions are met, then the associated action group will get executed. Here we see there are three immediate actions. It creates a contract. It creates a chatter post congratulating the opportunity owner for closing and winning the opportunity. It notifies the VP of sales via email that the opportunity was closed and won. As a scheduled action, it will create a high priority follow-up task for the associated accounts owner, which is scheduled to execute 6 days after the opportunity's close date. This first criteria is pretty similar to what you saw in the workflow rules. But here there's a valid case for the use of process builder because there are multiple if-then statements that we need to evaluate. So if the criteria conditions for the first decision box are not met, it will evaluate whether a high value deal has been lost. So here you would configure the criteria if the opportunity amount was more than $1 million and the opportunity stage is closed lost, it would evaluate to true and the immediate action would be to notify the VP of sales via an email alert and then stop the process. If neither of these criteria are met, it then evaluates whether a quote was given to the customer, which means we would be checking whether the opportunity stage is set to proposal or quote given. If this condition is true, there's no immediate action to be taken, but we'll be setting up scheduled actions to create a follow-up task 3 days after the record is updated. So we would check the last modified date of the record. So here using the process builder, we have combined three if-then statements or three criteria nodes and the associated actions into a single automated process. To automate the same business process with workflow rules, you would have to create three different workflow rules and use Apex triggers to create the contract record and post to the sales chatter groups. So essentially, you can use Process Builder as a more powerful and flexible automation tool instead of workflow rules. So essentially using Process Builder, you can create records of any object type, whereas for a workflow rule, it is not possible to create records, only a field update on the current record can be done. You can update any related record, not just the record or its parent. So field updates are also more flexible in Process Builder. You can use a quick action to create a record, update a record, or log a call. You can invoke a process from another process, or you can launch a flow. You can't schedule this action with workflows. With Process Builder, you can also send an email, send a custom notification, post to chatter, or submit the record for approvals. For the process builder demo, we will just take a very simple scenario. In the previous lecture for approval process, we saw that after creating a position record, the user has to submit for approval. So using process builder, we are going to automate this step. When a record is created, submit for approval if certain criteria are met. So let's go to setup, type process builder in the quick find box and click on process builder. We'll create a new process, ignore the pop-up and just continue in process builder. Name the process as submit new positions for approval. And we want to start the process when a record changes. Save that, click on add object. For the object, select position. In my case, it gives a warning as I have created another flow on the same object following a trailhead module. However, this warning is perfectly all right. We can have multiple processes on the same object. So we want to start the process when a record is created or edited. Let's save that and now add the criteria. We want the process to evaluate whether the position is now ready for approval. The criteria for executing the actions should be when these conditions are met. So let's define these conditions. We want the status field to be equal to new, add a row, define another field. We want the job description does not equal null. So the job description should not be empty. Add a row, hiring manager does not equal null. So when all of these conditions are met, we want this criteria to evaluate as true. Under immediate actions, we'll add an action. The action type is submit for approval. Action name, submit position for approval. The object is position. For the approval process, we want a specific approval process, which we defined in the previous video. So let's select the new position approval process that should be triggered. And the submitter will be the current user. So save that. Let's activate the process, confirm. So we have defined the process. Now let's test it out. Let's fill up the fields that are needed in the entry criteria. So as per the entry criteria, we need the skills to be filled in, education has to be not null, the hiring manager should be not null, and department should be not null, and the status should be new. And let's save this record. Now this record has automatically been submitted for approval. We no longer see a submit for approval button here because it met the criteria defined in the process. And we know the process was submitted for approval because the immediate action of the approval process has been triggered, which set the approval status as pending. It was null earlier. And if we look at the related records, we can see the approval history. It has been submitted for approval and it is now showing as pending for approval from the hiring manager. If you have followed along from the previous video where we defined the approval process, you will see that these are exactly the steps that we defined. So that was a demo of the process builder. This level of knowledge on workflow rules and process builder should be enough for your admin exams. And of course, feel free to explore Trailhead to get more knowledge on these topics. In the next few videos, I will be focusing on flows. I'll also be putting up some videos on how to migrate processes created in Process Builder to Flow. And that is going to be a pretty important topic to have knowledge of over the next 1 or 2 years as Salesforce shuts down Process Builder and workflow rules and focuses on more and more features in Flow. Do subscribe to this channel for all those future updates and see you in the next lectures.